Okay, we are rolling, and this is going to be my second video on the AudioQuest NightHawk. It's a fairly new headphone, and I've had this for 33 days. Well, actually this has been 33 days since I did the first video, so I've had it for only 6 weeks. Anyway, recent discoveries during that time period. I'm going to explain some of why I think this is probably the best headphone that I've got and have had maybe in a long time or ever. The thing is that today I read through a very large headphone forum, 50 pages of their discussion on the NightHawk, and it impressed me that going back to the earlier parts of that, how many people had huge differences of opinion on how it sounded. Some people thought it sounded positively dull, other people thought it sounded spectacular. And my first impressions, from which I built my first review, were that it could be tilted towards the right, the sound a little more bassy, a little less bright, to have a darker sound maybe than a typical hi-fi headphone. And anyway, a more accurate impression, I think, is from my experience listening to this, and also from what I know from other things, that it's probably a better sound than a typical top-of-the-line hi-fi headphone. And I'll try to give you a clue why that is. First of all, one of the factors in this is going to be best illustrated by looking at the July 11 issue of Stereophile magazine, and you can find that online on the Stereophile site. It's a review of the Audience 2+2 loudspeaker. It may go by other names. Audience is the company, I think, and then the 2+2 is the particular review. But anyway, they're describing a single driver system, and because it doesn't have any crossovers, why it produces less distortion than multi-driver systems. Now, obviously, single driver systems don't have the big speakers for the deep bass and the little tiny speakers for the extreme treble that the multi-driver systems do, but a really good implementation of a single driver system does produce very good sound, hi-fi sound, and lacks all those things that crossovers bring. So to understand that anyway, or to get a good picture on it, check out that Stereophile review from July 2011. That'll explain a lot of what I'm talking about. But anyway, I found that there are 3 factors that influence my review of this AudioQuest NightHawk. And the first factor was what I used to review it with, or what I used to measure it with, because I do measurements. I do tone sweeps, and I do listening to certain things, and I compare with different headphones. And based on 4 years of reviewing with 150 headphones, I got a pretty good idea how to do that. Got a lot of techniques, and some of which I've explained in a video review. But anyway, using something like this, which is a latest version iPod 128 gig, or the iPhone 6 Plus, which I have here, with this Oppo HA2 portable amp, DAC and amp. That's one means, and I did use that for the primary part of my measurements. I figured the frequency response would be the same as on the laptop. Turns out that probably partly it's not, and partly it's a perception based on certain things that come out of these Apple players. And so there was quite a difference. It turned out that I measured about plus or minus 5 decibels with this headphone with the portable system, and only plus or minus 2 with the laptop. And of course, plus or minus 2 is something you could disregard on the basis of sample variances and other factors like that. So anyway, the ideal system I found for running this headphone course would be a computer through the USB with something like the Dragonfly DAC here, micro streamer DAC here, or various DACs and amps that are made for computer USBs, and hopefully you would find a good one that's not sensitive to impedance variations or anything like that. And this is a highly sensitive headphone, so I thought portable use might be a really good idea, but I'd suggest to people who are going to use it as a portable that they maybe think about a better amp. So anyway, those 3 factors that made the difference for me were, on the first factor, the NightHawk headphone, I think, is made not to be bright, like a typical Sennheiser, maybe a Sennheiser 600, 800, or the Beyerdynamics T1, T90, or the AKG K712, 812, or other headphones that are known as, top-end hi-fi sounds, and I exclude the planar headphones there because they typically don't have that bright high end. So that was one expectation right there and one factor, and my perception of sound. Factor number 2 was the fact that I used the portable system to do the primary part of that measurement, and so I think that kind of threw me off right there. And then factor number 3, of course, was that lack of those interesting sounds in the background, call them distortions or whatever they happen to be. So that was a third factor, those missing distortions or other sounds that made it seem like something was not there, made the sound seem kind of dull. But remove those factors or those expectations, you might find that you've got something here that's really unusual and maybe even sensational, like some other people are saying. I find it pretty incredible. Now, one of the key songs that I used to really zero in on the sound quality underneath all this stuff, all these different factors and everything, was a song by Dead Can Dance, and the name of the song is De Profundis, DEPROFUNDIS. And in that particular song, at about 1 minute and 15 to 1 minute and 22 seconds in, so about a 7-second span, the female voice there hits a kind of a fairly high note and continues that note for about 5 to 6 seconds. And the difference in these headphones is with that particular bit of song right there, it's just pretty amazing. The NightHawk plays that quite cleanly. Some of these other headphones, it rings like well, I can't even describe. You just get a sound that almost sounds like you've got a resonance there that's gonna, well, ring your ears pretty good. Anyway, so the sound quality turned out pretty good, and I'd recommend that somebody get that track. I've got I use for testing, I use wave tracks that I've ripped directly from CD, unless I just happen to get something on a download high res. It's really good, but mostly I try to get my CDs and rip those to bit perfect wave tracks for testing. And then whatever else I use is whatever I happen to have laying around or put in a special place for testing. So anyway, that was my little preview on why I think this headphone is a whole lot better than a lot of people are giving it credit for. But because of their existing systems and their existing habits and biases and so on, and experiences, they probably aren't quite ready for this. So one of the things I think that is going to be pretty interesting going into the future. I've heard that because this is the first AudioQuest headphone, they might bring out some new headphones, maybe some lower priced headphones, maybe some that are a little more conventional in their technology than the high-tech stuff that they put into here, to reduce those distortions and other problems. I'm kind of wondering if that more conventional construction or sound that they introduce in those new headphones is going to kind of go against what they're doing right here. Or maybe that doesn't really matter, I don't know, but I think this is a pretty interesting development, something that needs to be explored more by people who are aware of the concept that's in that Stereophile article I'm talking about. The lack of distortions that you can get by having better build quality, better drivers, and so on and so forth. One other thing about the NightHawk course is that it's a dual entry headphone, and they've got two mono plugs going in here, so carrying just the left and the right signal here. So this headphone is balanced ready, so when you get a balanced amp, you should be able to get a cable that will, deliver the left channel to the left side and right channel to the right side, and not have both your channels carried up the cable and everything else. You'll have less crosstalk that way, and should get a cleaner sound that way. Balanced mode is pretty common nowadays amongst audiophiles, at least. So whatever we have there is whatever we have there, and I don't really have much else to say here except that I think that if you could get a copy of that song, that Dead Can Dance, De Profundis, and check out that stretch of the song from about 1:16 to 1:22, I think you might find that's a really good headphone tester. It's a pretty amazing sound, comparing the difference between this and other headphones that I have laying around. So anyway, there's another little look at the AudioQuest NightHawk headphone, and thank you very much.